so lovely to have you on BTC Writers Room. BTC The Writers Room, should I say.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is our second season, Amy, and we're just so delighted to have you as part of our second season. How are you? How have you been?
Tell us.
I've been as good as you can expect in a pandemic with 2 children, young children to homeschool. Apart from that, I'm great.
How old are your children?
The 6 and 9.
Okay.
I mean, the 9-year-old's okay, but the 6-year-old will never kind of sit in front of the iPad, go on Google Classrooms by herself. So just the way it is.
That is very true. You know, I think for me, I've kind of just been in awe of all the people that have had to just sort of adjust to become teachers all of a sudden, teachers of their own children. You know, I also think the temptation to have fun with them must be quite big. You know, like to say, you know, let's just skip school for a day and just have some fun. I would be terrible at that, which is probably why I don't have children.
It's an absolute juggling act. But before we get into it, because I'm so wanting for us to get into the conversation with you, Amy, it's such a delight to have you. I want to just tell everybody out there who you are. So let me just read your introduction. So Amy is a British Hong Kong playwright. Her plays include Under the Umbrella, Adaptations, Shangri-La, and an adaptation of Miss Julie. Radio plays include Tiger Girls of BBC Radio 4 and KILBURN PASSION of BBC Radio 3, and you're currently under the commission to the Royal Shakespeare Company and Kiln Theatre, and is developing a play called THATCHER in China. We need to talk more about that at the National Theatre Studio. She's also part of the inaugural Genesis Almeida New Playwrights Big Plays program, as well as the Young Vic and Sky Stage and Screen Commissioning scheme. Amy is also a historian and is the author of Nationalism and Political Liberty at Oxford University Press. She is fluent in English, German, and Chinese, and regularly translates Chinese plays into English. So lovely to have you here, Amy. That's a bit of a tongue twister at times, but it's fantastic that I got through all of that. So
it's always so spectacular. Oh my goodness, Amy, this is very impressive. You are such an incredible woman. So thank you so much for being here. I love that you speak so many languages. I mean, where have you lived? Have you lived all of those places?
Yeah. So I was born in Australia actually, but then I grew up in Hong Kong. Then I went to the States, came here for a PhD. Then I've lived in Germany and Austria, and also half a year in Japan, and then back here. So it's been all over. Yeah.
Wow.
And
so you've got like multiple
been really
different
strange
homes.
being. Yeah, I do feel mostly that I'm in exile. So it's you know, it's just that feeling when, I guess I used to feel like I was an emigre, you know, from Hong Kong, and that I would go back one day, and then now that's kind of gone. So
Yeah, I think that's quite a common thing. And like I know my mom used to say that, you know, her parents always had the aspiration to go back and never did. You know, I think that there's always that connection that you have that will never go away, you know, and that's a beautiful thing to hold on to. And it's a beautiful thing to, you know, share with your children as well. The fact that they also have that connection through you. I really want to talk about Thatcher in China. Can you tell us a little bit more about, that's such a great title, by the way, but please tell us a little bit more about that and explain the title to us.
So it's, well, it started off as a play about Margaret Thatcher in China negotiating the future of Hong Kong in the 80s. And so I think my starting point for that play actually was when she died in 2013. I read like every obituary in the UK, you know, kind of from The Guardian to The Telegraph, you know, just the whole spectrum. And none of them mentioned Hong Kong. And I was so upset because that was the biggest foreign policy defeat. Like, she went to Beijing 3 months after winning the Falkland Wars, and she was like, I'm not giving up Hong Kong. And she actually, the Foreign Office was like, you know, we can't win against China. You know, they're also a nuclear power. They're not Argentina. And she's like, I don't care. Like, we have it by like 3 legal treaties. I'm not giving it up. And she said that to them. And the Foreign Office was actually hoping that she would concede sovereignty over Hong Kong to China, and in return for like continual administration of Hong Kong. But she just wanted the whole thing. And then like 2 years after, you know, 2 years later though, she just had to sign away the whole colony. And she writes in her memoirs that like she was deeply depressed after that, you know, and it was like she definitely saw it as like her biggest defeat on the foreign policy front, because she pretty much like had a lot of wins, you know. She was successful, you know, on like the world stage, you know, like punching above her weight and all that sort of stuff. And this one, I think when she went there, she really felt that Deng Xiaoping was like a really cruel, cold man, wouldn't yield an inch, and that, you know, she was completely humiliated. So I think that was the starting point. But then it's morphed into this other thing, you know. It's like it's this time traveling play now. So it's actually set during the recent Hong Kong protests, and this. So my protagonist is down and out, I guess, sorcerer. So in Hong Kong we have this tradition of, well, I guess it's like voodoo, you know, like you basically, they're old women sitting under like a flyover, like an overpass, a bridge, and they're like beating, and you give them the name of your enemy, and then they like beat an old shoe, you know, and like somehow that curses them.
Wow.
And
Okay.
they were doing they were doing roaring business when I was back in the summer of 2019, because, you know, like both political camps were like cursing each other, and they were cursing the leaders and everything. And so that was my starting point. And then there's like down and out guy who's like an addict and everything, and had like the best education from Hong Kong, went to Oxford, and then somehow ended up doing this thing. And because of like the feng shui currents under this bridge, he like kind of travels back in time, and he inhabits, it's almost like he is possessed by like Thatcher and like the other people that were during these negotiations. And I think I'm trying to explore the idea that I feel in Hong Kong we suffer from a double colonization. So there's the British colonization. So at one point I have a scene where like Thatcher and Churchill are playing Risk on the beaches of Hong Kong. Anyway, it's all rather magic realist. But so my protagonist is possessed by the spirit of Winston Churchill, but then he's also later on in the negotiations possessed by the spirit of Li Peng, who's known as the butcher of Tiananmen. Well, you know, for obvious reasons, he ordered the massacre, basically. And so because I think growing up in Hong Kong, what I felt was that we weren't British enough for the British, because I mean the big political betrayal in my time, I think, was that in 1984 they signed away Hong Kong. In 83 they downgraded every Hong Kong British subject's status, you know, so we became British nationals overseas, and then that meant we didn't have the right to reside in the UK, and Thatcher did that because she like it was politically not tenable, I think, for her, and from her point of view, you know, to have like 5 million refugees, you know, turn up at the UK. So I guess I always felt growing up that we weren't British enough for the Brits. They didn't want us, but now, especially like China definitely thinks we're like some Trojan horse, and that we've been like so completely colonized, and we're so infected with these like ideas like, you know, individualism and democracy and bourgeois liberalism or whatever, you know. And so I see that play as a kind of exorcism of this guy. Like he goes through all the historical personages and what happened in the 80s. I feel like what happened and didn't happen in the 80s is very much shaping what's happening now, because Thatcher, you know, okay, like I grew up really hating her, like most people in Hong Kong, different reasons from in the UK, you know, like I don't think we didn't really knew much about like coal mining or whatever, but like it was squarely for like her, you know, being, I think, basically really messing up the negotiations and then sinking all the lifeboats, you know. So But then now reading through the archives, I'm like, oh wow, she really tried to fight. Like she really tried to push through, like to put in that treaty that there'll be universal suffrage and there'll be like democratic elections, and to, which is ironic given that, you know, like Hong Kong was a British colony for 150 years, and it was only the last 10 years that they tried to introduce like democracy, you know. So before that it was all like appointed government, and but she really fought to put like really cast iron guarantees about independent judiciary and freedom of the press, and right now that's really, it's just so resonant for me right now, because all that's being taken away from us, and so I have some grudging admiration for her now, you know, that I felt like she had like, well, you know, compared
she's
to like
such a complex, I mean, she's such
now,
a complex figure. Yeah, exactly. I think that
but she had some principles, and I mean, I still think she was really racist, and but then
problematic,
well, just some of the things that she's said. But you know, on that front, you know, I felt, well, you know, she, I mean, was definitely her identity as a Cold War warrior, you know, like as one of the leaders of the free world with Reagan, you know, so it propelled her to do that. And of course, like, all that's just paper now, you know. So like, I guess the British went into it thinking this was a legally binding treaty, and the Chinese were like, well, it's a piece of paper. And so sorry, I've lost my thread. So I was saying it's kind of exorcism of, I'm trying to come to a Hong Kong identity, I think, through this protagonist, that we're not defined by just our British colonizers or our Chinese colonizers. That at the end, it's like his journey is kind of from self-loathing to some kind of acceptance. Sounds a bit trite when I put it like that, but it's really complex to describe.
It sounds really I mean, you've really tried to tackle such an epic piece of history, right? Like it for me, it sounds like, and again, this is still in development. Is this play that you're still working on currently?
Yeah, I mean, I submitted what I thought was like, you know, a fairly advanced draft, and I've been told that yes, we love it. It still needs, you know, well, they were actually like, you know, we're going to have to like meet in person somehow because it's complex dramaturgy.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, so I think maybe after March, who knows if we can meet in person. Yeah,
who knows? Yeah, exactly. Who knows what the future holds in terms of meeting anyone in person. And it's interesting because I think even during this time, it's Zoom is fine for some things, but not everything. You know what I mean? And I think that there's something around just being in the same space as somebody, especially when you're working on a play, you're trying to figure out, okay, right, the mapping of something, or how do we let's look at this particular scene and just have more of a detailed address and conversation around it. Do you know what I mean? I think it's really difficult to always do that online because you're so mindful of just everything else that's going on in your own home as well, right? You're having to contend with children, or you're having to contend with, you know, whoever you're living with at that time. Do you know what I mean? So it's really can be quite challenging, you know, and how much you're trying to fit in one day. I mean, I know because I obviously live with my husband, do you know what I mean? So we're always trying to figure out, okay, who has the office? I've got the office now, and he's trying to have the office later, and it's always just constantly just trying to kind of, you know, navigate how we utilize our space, you know. So having that time, I can only imagine, would be really, really beneficial, you know, to have it in person. So yeah, definitely keep us in you know, up to date with that, though. It sounds like such a fantastic piece of writing.
Oh, I can't wait for it. I am so curious. Like, it sounds so exciting. Also,
it's really close to my heart.
Yes, and I think it would be. I think it would be, because I think even just unpacking the complexity of being colonized by two great nations is just, I can't even imagine that. Like, in my experience, we were colonized by the British, and honestly, the way that is such a huge sort of identifying aspect of who we are and what we're about and how we move forward and how we push our narrative through the world. And then to have this kind of conflict, this kind of pull, and it's phenomenal. I can't wait for it, man. Definitely let us know when we can come and watch it or read it or whatever, and we are there.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. one thing that I absolutely love, and Sim will say this because
He does love this.
This is my favorite question in the whole world, and I always ask it. Is that I mean we always ask, actually, just the writers that come into our writers' room, into our Beyond the Canon the writers' room, and we always just ask who they write for. So I mean, Amy, who do you write for?
I think I always write for my grandmothers, you know, and they're dead, but sorry. And
I don't think when you said that out loud, just laughing. But that's
I love that. Yes.
But I imagine, well, especially my paternal one, like, because she's so, I mean, I really miss her, and I felt we did have those. I mean, she only had 3 years of schooling, and, you know, like, was, you know, I mean, taught herself to read, but like kind of a very basic level, and like 5 words of English. But I've always felt like she's just so grounded, you know, and has such a good bullshit detector. So I kind of, you know, because, you know, like, I can get very wrapped up in my theories and things like that, and then I imagine that, you know, how would she react to this story on stage, and of course, because she doesn't understand English, she'll probably be like, the costumes are really nice or something, but, you know, but if she did, you know, yeah, so I think I write for her a lot. I think because a lot of my stories are from, you know, my own culture, I think I've learned that if I try to write to what I think of as a Western mainstream audience, it's just dead in the water, because you try to over explain, you know, you feel like you have the responsibility to whatever, you know, like, be exemplary, like, tone down things. And I always imagine that I'm writing for a Hong Kong audience, and then you know, if it's that kind of play, you know, obviously the other plays, like, I'm writing a play about the Pope, you know, and I'm probably not writing it for a Hong Kong audience, but I then, then I submit it, and then people tell me, whether not from my culture, like, what needs to be signposted more, and then I just put in the signpost. But I try to do as little of it as possible. So
I love that. Look, I think that's where the power is. That's where your voice is so strong and it's so uniquely yours, is the fact that you do write for your grandmother, you know, and like, now I'm going to be rereading your plays going, okay, let me see how grandmother would potentially feel about this one. But I would love to talk about that in terms of representation, as it ties into the East Asian community, and just in terms of, you know, what's as we start to really think about rebuilding the arts post pandemic, if we can even imagine when that's going to be. But what's your hopes, you know, what's your hopes for the future, as it pertains to the East Asian artistic communities?
Oh, you know, I mean, we are a very fractured community. The term nowadays is East Asian and Southeast Asian, which I think it's a wonderfully inclusive term, but I feel it papers over a lot of differences. You know, you are going from, like, the Philippines to Myanmar. So, like, my mother grew up in Burma at the time, Myanmar, so I'm quite, and, you know, all the way to, like, Korea and Japan, and sometimes I do wonder there is a lot of internal tension about that, you know, like, you know, where we talk about, you know, we shouldn't yellowface or blackface, but then, you know, like, if you were writing a play about Tibetans, then can Chinese people play Tibetans, and all that, and who can tell that story? And that's very present in my mind, because my first play, Shangri-La, so it was based on my experiences being my brother's history guide for his sustainable travel company in China, and he still does, well, he would, if it wasn't for the pandemic, still run tours to Yunnan, to, like, the kind of original Shangri-La area, which is, like, you know, I guess part of Greater Tibet, with lots of Tibetan people living there and had a Tibetan character, and the Tibetans in the UK were really upset that I was writing that play as a Chinese, and that we didn't cast a Tibetan actor. And we eventually we did sit down and have a dialogue with them. And we're like, well, I've literally raised the money myself, and I've looked on Spotlight, and there is one person that says they're a Tibetan actor, and she's a woman, and this character is actually a man. And I've looked, and the closest one we can get is in Switzerland, and this is like in a pub theater, and we can't do that. But it really brought home to me this thing about I think there is just so much more work to be done, like within the community, about whose voices are the loudest, and like how we deal with like Asian racism. So that's one thing I think, because it's something about like getting our own house in order that's quite close to my heart, I think. So I think outward facing, what comes on stage, and I know, because I get asked a lot, that at the moment there's a lot of interest in like big China plays, but I think it's coming from a place of fear. It's obviously coming from a place of, this is like the systemic rival in the global world. And to some extent I agree, of course, like being from Hong Kong, I'm kind of like, yeah, we are being crushed by this like systemic rival in the global world. So, but I'm also very aware that like, even though I am so frightened and like so upset about like so many of the things that are, done by this regime, by the Chinese regime, but I am not looking at it with the eyes of an outsider. Like, I feel like I do, to some extent, I understand where they're coming from, and they're not like, whereas I feel like some of the conversations I've had, like people commissioning me, I might as well be writing like the War of the Worlds, could be like Martians invading, it's like a really alien thing for them. So I guess I would, in a way, I think I want there to be smaller stories as well as like those big geopolitical stories. So I actually don't think, having just written this like big geopolitical story about Hong Kong,
you're just giving us like an epic summary of your this huge story, this huge undertaking of Thatcher in China.
But I really also want people to see that it's not a monolith, it's a mosaic. There's so many, it's so complex. There's so many, it's the sum total of all these tiny stories, and in a way I feel, because China especially is thought of as a monolith, I feel that needs to be dissected. And I would also like for there to be many more Southeast Asian stories, because I was saying that my mother, she's Chinese, but my whole maternal family, there's several generations in Southeast Asia, and it's that's kind of gets completely subsumed under the whole like China Japan thing, so just more differentiation. Yeah
I think that's such a fantastic point, because I do think about, just in terms of just the platforms that are even there for East Asian playwrights to have their plays produced, if we talk specifically to the UK, but also I know that this is an issue beyond the UK too, just in terms of who are those playwrights. And every now and again you hear like maybe one name that gets mentioned or two names, but never sort of a grand list, of names, when people are starting to think about that talent pool of East Asian playwrights.
Yeah, we are very part of it though is, I think, also like my family, I was definitely not encouraged to be a playwright, and I think it's such an like maybe first, second generation immigrant problem, not because of anything inherent within our cultures that is inimical to the arts, but it's just what you have to do to survive as an immigrant, to come over. Then your focus is so much on like the pragmatic, you know, the respectable, the secure, you know, and art is none of these things. So I feel that talent pool is small, not just because of the kind of wider systemic things that we all know about. It is also it's a generational thing. It's an immigrant story, and you know, it's obviously at the end of the day also that first generation of immigrants and the systemic racism that they have suffered, that, you know, like makes them only trust, you know, jobs that come with secure salaries or whatever, you know, and not, you know, not be secure enough and relaxed enough to be like, well, you know, why not the arts, you know?
Definitely.
Do you know, speaking to that though, like I absolutely love that you're a historian. Like I think that's amazing. I love history. I did A-level history, but I absolutely think
is that your claim?
That is my claim to history.
Like Amy?
No, I am saying, Amy, I am coming for you. I just have lots and lots more work to do. But no, but this is just generally my happiness that I could do a history question. No, but I absolutely love history. And I think what I've been really kind of having fun with, like during our conversation, is that you speak to sort of like history in context, you know, like the wider history, but also kind of personal history, as in like the history of your family. I kind of like that. And it seems like that kind of sort of gets married into your work, this kind of fusion of both of these sort of like, you know, aspects of history, which I think is really amazing. But can I just ask, like obviously, like, which came first? Like, were you a historian first and then you kind of went into being a playwright, or is it vice versa, or do they just kind of always kind of grow within each other?
Well, actually, I think I always wanted to be a writer, like, and like a fiction writer, and as soon as I knew that there were plays, I wanted to be a playwright, quite specifically, rather than a novelist or anything. But I also knew that my parents would not let me be a playwright. So I guess I thought that of all, you know, I thought I'll get a PhD, and that's at least respectable, even if it's not like a medical doctor, it's a doctor or something, and I'll teach at a university, and they don't have to like pretend I don't exist, or like, you know, when the relatives ask, oh, how's Amy doing, they can at least say, oh, you know, she's a lecturer, or she's like a professor or whatever. So like that's the honest answer, like why I ended up doing history. And I do, like, my dad loves history. Like, I mean, he's not a professional historian, but like it's like his passion. So I think I got some of that from there. But I think so it's something that binds us, but it's also something that divides us, because I think he thinks of history as like it's already all determined, you know, like the facts already known, and he doesn't understand what do you mean by researching history. And I'm always saying, well, because the facts are only partially known, number one, you know, and number two, it's even if like all the facts are known, or like or like every single surviving document you've been through and everybody's combed through, but it's just how that story is told is so subjective. So we have these arguments, like, and that's sad. So yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is that like history was a way for me, like, of writing stories and not going the full hog. But then I think I realized after a while that when you start off as a junior academic, you know, if I said I wanted to write about the history of the revolutions of 1848, you know, I wouldn't be allowed to do that as a junior academic. You know, you'll have to end up like writing about the sewage system in Budapest in like 1848 or something, and the relation of that to like the outbreak of revolution. I mean, it just got so, I mean, what the specialization was so extreme.
Yeah.
I just felt, you know, sod it. And, you know, I don't, you know, my my first book, like the print run was kind of like 500, you know, and most of it was brought up by like academic libraries, and I just felt like maybe 20 people in the whole world, and they had to review it, read it, you know. So I mean, not that, you know, of course, when you start off in a pub theatre, like, you know, you'd be lucky to get 500 people in, but eventually, you know, you think theatre would reach more people.
I mean, Yeah, you're definitely not at the stage where you're struggling to get 500 people in the door right now, Amy, to come and see your plays. Like, you're definitely not at the pub theatre anymore. I mean, you've worked at let me just go up actually, what, the Belgrade Theatre in Coventry, Hampstead Theatre, Finborough Theatre. Do you know what I mean? You're on radio, and actually now you're at the National Theatre Studio working on that play. So I think that it's safe to say that you're kind of you're a long way away from that moment that you were when you started. But I do want to talk about,
I do love pub theatre. It's like,
oh,
I
no,
really,
no,
give a
okay,
shout
let me
out.
just make sure that I'm making it really clear. There's nothing, yeah, I've got nothing against pub theatre, but what I'm trying to say is in terms of just
it's
struggling
a
to
reach,
get the 500 people in the door. But yeah, you're definitely your name is out there, largely and widely, and your plays are obviously, you know, really speak to just so many issues. And but I really want to talk about translations. I really want to talk about, because we haven't really met that many people, if I'm honest, that have come on here and that have actually in their biography speak to the fact that they have done translations. And you've said very strongly in there is that you have translated Chinese plays to English. And I think that that's an area that is just so important and is so needed. I mean, we've even had requests, you know, people coming to us saying, do you know any translators, right, that can come in and actually translate the work, and to make it more accessible, because accessibility is obviously, as we know, is really key, and it's the main reason why we do even beyond the canon, is really to heighten that. But can you just talk to like what plays you have translated in the past, and also how did that work come about? Was that you finding plays when you were in China, for instance, or was that was that a project that somebody approached you with? It'd be great to just hear how that came about, and how many translations you've done to date.
And so I think it came about almost accidentally in a way. So I was pitching a play to the Hong Kong International Arts Festival, or like, well, you know, pitching a series of plays, and they're like, well, we don't want to do any of them, but like we really need someone to translate the plays that we do have from Chinese, because we want to like eventually produce them in the West. And then since I knew most of the playwrights that they wanted me to translate, so I was, you know, really happy to like that's how it started. And at first, and a lot of it was, you know how it is when you're starting out as a playwright, you can't make a living from that, so it was very welcome money. And you know, I have another friend who's a playwright and translator as well, and he once said, you know, Amy, you can get writer's block but you never get translation block. And I was like, yeah, totally. And it's just so wonderful to get into the mind of another playwright, and you know, to kind of see the choices from the inside that they're making. But it also it forces me really also to think about like just how theatre conventions are so different between cultures, and how subtext just works differently in different languages. Like, so plays are, you know, probably like I think maybe poetry as well, but like just much harder to translate than novels, because so much of it, you know, is, you know, what's unspoken, and what's unspoken is like, for example, in Hong Kong, you know, like you can ask anybody anything about money. You can ask them like how much they earned, and like how much, like, you know, how much they lost in the stock market, like how much their house is worth and all that, and you can't ask anything like that in the UK. But you cannot ask anything about sex, like you just cannot, you know, they're just like such different taboos, you know. And to be to try to, you know, get that convey that sense of like, this is a transgression, this is a, you know, trespassing on like ground that you cannot go on, you know, it's between languages. It's like it's a really interesting challenge, and it's one that I really enjoy. And yes, so sorry, that wasn't really answering the question of like
No,
how that came about.
it really did. I would love to know, if you can just share with us like some of the plays that you have translated, so we can just put that out there in the world that they are now translated. If you wish to just share like some of the titles of the plays that you have translated.
So I translated a really fascinating play. I think we ended up calling it like triads, or like 9 triads, something, because it's a kind of ironic joke, and it's by a Hong Kong playwright, one of the leading Hong Kong playwrights, called Long Man Hong, and the protagonist is like a young woman, like recent immigrant from China to Hong Kong, and she's fascinated by like Hong Kong movies of the 80s, especially the ones about the triads, which is like, you know, our version of the mafia and the police film things, and so she just really wants to find like real triad members to talk to, and like the policemen that deal with these triads. But then you know, she's in like 2018 Hong Kong, and those movies that in the 80s were made kind of in the heyday, you know, in the golden age, where like everything was really like buoyant and flamboyant, and like she just finds these really sad people in their 50s and 60s, you know, who are obviously reliving their glory days when talking to her, like in these oral interviews, but also making it up as they go along, you know, based on the same movies that they've seen, you know. So I think it's and the same with the police, and then later on find out that the police and the gangsters in this play are actually friends, you know, and they were childhood friends, and like how they grew apart, and then how through this girl all that like enmity is ignited again. But it's actually really about decline. It's about decline of, you know, the triads as heroes in Hong Kong, kind of like, you know, that whole Godfather glamour. It's also the decline of the police as a profession, because they used to be like just, I guess, really respected in Hong Kong, you know, and like, you know, kind of seen as really impartial, didn't abuse their powers, you know, like, you know, were just very a professional force. And now, of course, they're like seen as complete, they're tyrants, you know, they're like the instruments of a totalitarian government. That's how they're seen. So it's just, I just thought that premise was just so wonderful, like a young woman from China trying to find that glory day of Hong Kong through movies that she's grown up watching and glorifying, and then seeing the reality. So, yeah, it really moved me. But that was also like a really difficult play to translate, because there was so much specific slang for like gangsters that I didn't know growing up in Hong Kong, because I never belonged to a triad, you know.
You can't even rely on that personal experience for that one, really. It's like completely, wow.
So many euphemisms for like killing somebody that I never knew about, you know. So
so we're gonna now see that show up in your own work, because that was gonna happen. Now we're gonna see
like influx of triad terminology. Yeah. And then there's another play that I've just translated that was supposed to go on last year, 2020 in March, and obviously did not go on. So I think it's coming back in 2022 in the Hong Kong Arts Festival. It's by a friend of mine, Candice Chong. She is also another one of the like best playwrights in Hong Kong. She went to Central actually and did a master's here, but she mostly writes in Chinese. And so hers was just a really it was a really funny story about a gay romance, but it also had these political undertones, you know, because it was I think that the love triangle in question, there was like a barrister who's like very, very Anglophile, and then there's this guy from the working class, and then like along the way there are these random lovers. One of them's from mainland China, and you know, and there's no love lost in Hong Kong now for like people from mainland China. But there was this very funny line that I really struggled to translate, which is that, you know, well, he didn't want to go with him because he was from mainland China, but then, you know, when they ended up having sex, and when he saw the greatness of the ancestral country, he just knelt down and submit. And what he meant was, you know, like it was just a sexual joke. But like it's really funny in Chinese, because the greatness of the ancestral land is something that the Chinese government keeps on hammering home to us. You know, it's like, why aren't you patriotic? Are you see? And so like, and this was like completely used as like a really snide sexual joke. And so and I just
Amy, that is
translate
so
that for some reason. I know it is so brilliant, but I had to explain the context here, and everybody in Hong Kong would understand that this was used as political propaganda and it was being subverted. So yeah, it's just that kind of thing that's really hard to translate. Yeah.
Oh
So
my God, that's fantastic. And are they both published, or are
yeah,
they?
they're published in Hong Kong.
Okay,
So like
okay,
my yeah, yeah, I have it somewhere on my shelves. I
okay,
haven't had the
fantastic.
latest in print because I don't think they printed it because it didn't go on. So it's usually, it's
Oh
basically the
yeah,
play text for
yeah,
the program,
yeah.
so, but it will come back in 2022. I mean, I really hope so. Yeah.
Okay, we definitely
I
have to
mean,
get
who
the
knows?
contacts from you and share them on the website. That's fantastic. I would love to
Yeah.
read both of those.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think we need to kind of get into your 3 plays now, because
Oh, we haven't asked, we haven't even
Oh,
got a chance to ask all of the questions that we had for
questions.
you.
But I think we're just gonna need to get you to come back, Amy. I think that's just what's gonna have to happen.
I'd
You have
love
an
to.
open
I am
invitation
having so
forever
much
and
fun.
ever.
Sorry,
But
Amy, I didn't get what you were saying. Amy, you just responded. What did you just say? Sorry.
Oh, I said I love being here, so like I'd love to come back, but not to like take up too.
Oh,
Not,
definitely. We would love to
yeah,
have you back.
yeah.
just
Oh,
to
okay.
say,
Saru,
oh,
I'm really embarrassed about the 3 plays thing because, like, after I sent it to you, one of mine was like The Fate of the Cockroach. Then I was like listening to Sabrina Mahfouz's podcast, which I listened to a while back. And I realized that she had said the same play, and then you had said, "Oh well, like somebody else also said that." And I actually really thought I was the only person in the UK that read this play somehow. I've never like spoken
In
about
the
it to
whole of the
anybody.
UK, Amy.
in all of the UK, I love it. No, that is absolutely
It never
fine.
come up in conversation. So I was like, I cannot believe that it's come up 3 times, like in the
See,
same zero
but we
podcast.
love that though. We love that though, because then the writers' room is a great unifier. It's beautiful to actually see how these these plays, these stories are literally inspiring all of these incredible writers. I mean, come on. Great work is great work. But just to start off with,
Yeah.
before we listen to your 3 plays, just for anybody who doesn't really know what the segment is, essentially, one of the questions we ask all of the writers that come into the Beyond the Canon, the writers' room, is that we ask them if they could name 3 plays that they wish they had come across or they wish they had read or seen prior to them sort of entering the industry. And, like Amy said, there has been some sort of like, me too, hey, kind of conversations, but there's also been new work that we've also come across. And if you go onto our website, www.beyondthecanon.com, you will be able to see all the incredible works that have been there or been said in the writers' room.
Recommended, yeah.
Yes, please, definitely check it out. Or you could do like Amy did and just listen to previous episodes.
Amy, let me just say one thing. Amy, you know that's cheating, right? You know that you cheated by doing that.
I love the cheating. I think cheating is half the fun. And Amy, just to defend you as well with the cheating, I want to point out that Similia ended up saying about 5 plays.
Okay, you can't ask someone who is a black play specialist to name 3. Like, look, admittedly, I couldn't stop. And even now, I have the guilt that I carry, because I'm like, oh, but there was
oh my God, the guilt she carries,
I do. I feel like I need to be asked again, Sari, so I can list more plays that people should have on their shelves. But over to you, Amy. I mean, look, but you know what I would say one more time, to echo what Saru said, I think it's fantastic that we get plays that are mentioned more than once.
Yes,
I really do, but especially if they're plays that people have not heard of before. I think that does the very thing that we wanted this to do, which was to say, look, why don't you know these plays, right? Like, buy them today.
Maybe if you bump into Sabrina, you guys can talk about it, like
exactly.
Next time you see Sabrina, you'll be like, oh, sis, me too. Like, that work, I think this is beautiful. We like the conversations, the ripple effect. We live for that. But yes, over to you, Amy. Let's hear your 3 plays.
So since I already mentioned the cockroach play, so it's called The Fate of a Cockroach, and it's by El Hakim. Am I saying it right? I don't know. El Hakim. Yeah. So and it's the first act of the play is really about 3 cockroaches, like a king cockroach, a queen cockroach, and like their minister or something. And I think the king cockroach is like, we've never gone beyond like this horizon, and like I really want to explore, and like the queen's like, no, you can't, you know, you have to do your duty to your citizens, you can't just go explore. And the king cockroach goes up and he like falls into this bathtub, and it's like so smooth he just can't get up again, so he keeps on climbing, and he falls back in, climb up, falls back in, and his queen's kind of like, I told you so, you know. And then the second act, there's like a really browbeaten like civil
Okay, hold on a
servant,
minute,
human
Amy.
being.
Amy, don't spoil.
Yeah.
Don't do a spoiler alert.
Spoiler
like,
alert.
don't do a spoiler.
Right,
I'm gonna stop you there.
sorry.
I'm gonna stop you there, Amy, because otherwise you're gonna give the whole play away, and we
I
want people
wanted
to read
to
it themselves.
Sorry, I just love the play so much. But I think why, you know, I wish that I read it like before starting off is because I feel like as a minority playwright, you have a lot of dramaturgical pressure to like write really naturalistic plays and kind of journalistic plays that just explain your culture to like and history to like people who don't know about it. And so I just found it really liberating that, you know, you could start off with cockroaches, you know, and like not, you know, like not write the Wikipedia article about like the history of Egypt or whatever, you know, he was trying to convey. So like I found that really liberating, and that's why I wish I had read it before I went in, because it would have saved me quite a lot of grief and probably given me a bit more ammunition to use in dramaturgical meetings. And okay, so the other play, the other two plays that I really love. So one is a Yuan Dynasty 800-year-old Chinese play. It's by one of the most famous Chinese playwrights called Guan Hanjing. But this particular play I had never heard of. It's called Wind and Dust Partner Rescues a Sister, and it's really basically like Taming of the Shrew, but the women win, you know. And so I love the play, you know, just so subversive, like, and it's about like honor and loyalty and love and solidarity between courtesans, between prostitutes, you know, which were absolutely the lowest of the lowest in China, and also legally you could kill them and like not be convicted, basically. So
that's wild.
so it's a comedy. It's really, really funny, actually. So you know how Sarah, we were talking earlier about like how, you know, about rape and consent, and you know, and like leaving your country and then realizing there was another way of looking at it. And I've always kind of felt guilty, you know, that there were a lot of things that I really dislike about my own culture, about the status of women, and you know, obviously about like attitudes towards, you know, individual freedoms and rights, and like, you know, children's rights versus like parental decrees. And but then I always feel guilty because I'm like, well, then I'm imbibing these Western values and I'm like kind of betraying my culture. And so like I loved like discovering this play that I never knew about, like by this very famous playwright, but that has somehow like completely was lost to the canon of like plays that are taught at school in China and in Hong Kong. Because I felt, oh, then there is like this proto-feminist thing within my own culture. And so I think it's really important to remember that cultures aren't innately reactionary or misogynistic or whatever, you know. It's always cultures are always like being negotiated, and they're always evolving. And you know, like, you know, pre-1960s Western culture was very, you know, very probably much more traditional, you know, than and similar to, you know, what I grew up with. So it's not really a Western versus the other cultures thing, you know. So I just really loved finding that within that really subversive voice within my own culture. And that's so and it's like I actually felt this is a perfectly constructed play, you know, like it just also from stagecraft and like structure and everything. It's just so fantastic. So, and my third play is a play called Villa by Calderon, and I saw it as a rehearsed reading at the Royal Court, and it was just it's basically just three women debating, like they, you know, what they should do with a villa, a house, you know, which was a site of like huge atrocities in history. Like, should they turn it into a museum? Should they raise it to the ground? And like they all have a stake in it because they were all like victims in that house. And what I mean, there were two things that were like a complete revelation to me about it, which was that, you know, I had been told, you know, like over and over in playwriting classes, oh, you know, conflict's really important. You don't just like park and bark. You don't just talk and talk and talk about like big political ideas, you know. And I was like, that whole play was really talky. It was literally three women sitting across around the table. But because the conflict was so embedded within the ideas, the big political ideas, like it was one of those moments where like you could hear the audience, you know, they were collectively holding their breath. Like it was so intense, you know. So I felt it's, you know, conflict doesn't, and action, dramatic action doesn't necessarily mean, you know, like blowing up things and like, you know, whatever, like parkouring around the stage or whatever. It really can, that dramatic action and revelation and turns and the whole journey arcs can be through like political ideas. So that was like a really huge thing for me. And the other thing was because it was a play in translation, so you know, it was written for like a Latin American audience, so it didn't make any allowance. It just assumed you knew the history. And I, you know, because at the time, like I was saying, you know, I was really struggling with how much exposition. So that was when I was like, you know what, just screw the exposition. I'm just going to assume that people have a lot more knowledge than they actually do, and just trust that they will catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's such an important point, I think, you know, and I think you're so right in terms of like how we can get so trapped with saying, oh my gosh, people are not going to understand this, I'm not going to understand, and overly explain, you know, our culture or cultural references. And you're right. Let them work, you know, let them do their work. I'm all for that. I'm all for that. Like, you know, there are three amazing plays, and they're now going to be, like Esteru said, we're now going to add them to our website. So thank you so much for those recommendations. I know that I'm definitely going to be buying a few of those. I was like, actually, let me go on my Amazon and put them in my basket. I'm definitely going to be buying those. So thank you so much, and really great reflections in terms of like how they would have benefited you, but also how they still benefit you now, you know, choices that you make when writing. Like, thank you so much for that, Amy. It was so clear, and it made me think about that actually. So brilliant, really, really great stuff. So we're going to go into now our lightning round. Okay, so this is new. You're not going to see it on the Sabrina Mafuz one. That wasn't on there, Amy. Okay, so you can't cheat on this one. So
you can try.
So with this round, we're going to just literally ask you questions, and you can only give a one-word answer, and at the most one sentence answer. No more than that, Amy. Okay, so you can't go into detail about anything. You have 10 seconds to answer each question, okay? And you can only use one word, one sentence at the most. Okay, so so we're gonna go. The rules clear, Amy, because we have to be really clear with writers, because you guys do not like rules.
And also, your writers, you've got a lot you want to say. Explain.
So we're gonna make a start now. Okay, over to you, Sri, with the first question.
Okay, first question is, what one thing which you love would you give up to be an even better writer?
Chocolate.
Okay, cool. Plays or musicals?
Plays.
If you could tell your younger self something, what would it be?
Relax.
Nice.
Would you consider an unproduced play as incomplete?
Yes.
What is the best money you have ever spent as a writer?
On a theatre ticket to the villa thing I was telling you about.
Okay, we'll take that. And
we will take it.
Do you read your reviews? And if so, or if not, why not? And why so?
I don't anymore, because they're just somebody's opinion, you know, and and I feel I learn more from the audience reactions.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. And what are the 3 essential ingredients when writing a drama?
Ideas, characters, and deep conflict.
Last question, Amy. You ready for this one? Okay, get ready. 10 seconds. Name 2 of the greatest, in your opinion, East Asian playwrights of all time.
Timi Serie M.I. He's a Japanese novel writer from like 10th century. And
Nice.
Guan Hanjing, you know, I was saying the guy that wrote my proto-feminist play 800 years ago.
You did it! You did it! You did it! Well done, Amy!
Easier. That was so easy.
It was a close call with the chocolate. It was a close call with the first one. You got the hang of it. You did yourself proud. Thank you so much. Like, this has been so much fun. It's been so informative. I've learned loads. I'm sure
so much. Yes.
And I'm sure that our viewers is going to get so much out of this interview. Like, I'm already like going to be going on Amazon like straight after this call. I'm going to go straight on Amazon, and I'm going to be Googling, and I definitely want those translated plays. But thank you so much. It's been a joy. And of course, please do come back to the Beyond the Canon, the writers'
room.
To have you.
Thank you for having me. I've really loved talking to you both, and it was really stimulating.
We've enjoyed you.
And, yeah.
Oh, definitely. Well, look, get right in with it. You got that play to finish up.
Yes, because we're waiting for it. We're waiting for it.
THATCHER in China. As soon as the world opens up, we want it to be safe, but we definitely want to see it on the stage very soon. Wish you all the very best of all of the plays that are in development right now, and the plays that you're working on now. We're just waiting to get the green light on, right, for it to be safe. So we'll definitely look out for that.
Well, I mean, you know, cast size of 12, you're not just never going to do it under socially distanced conditions, you know. It's just
thank you so much, Amy. We appreciate you, and this has been so incredible, and I cannot wait for everybody to just really get stuck into this episode. It is so fun right now, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Similia. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.